Righto, Year 12s. This is the first video for Term 4, so we're going to look at this whole idea of correlation and variables. Okay, so big words, but really correlation really just talks about one thing being linked to another. Okay, whether it causes it or has some kind of relationship to it. If there's a correlation between two things, they have some kind of a link. Okay, variables, they are just things that can be measured. Okay, so if you put numbers to it and units, it's a variable. So e.g., it could be meters, it could be seconds, could be dollars, whatever. Okay, but you can measure it, you can put numbers to it, it has units, that's a variable. Okay, so big words, but that's basically what we're looking at here. This whole idea of one thing being linked to another and the maths behind that, and then variables, things that can be measured. It's just a fancy word for stuff that you can go and measure, basically. All right, so let's talk about the concepts. Okay, so let's look at this idea. We've got a thing that can be measured, and then a second thing that can be measured. Mate, you know, we'll look at some examples a bit later, but you can put numbers to each of these. Okay, you can get a measuring tape out, you can put them on the scale balance, you can pull out a stopwatch, whatever it is, you can measure it and put numbers to it. But here's the kicker. This thing here either causes, this thing here causes that one, or it has an impact. If it doesn't cause it, it has an impact on it. It changes it somehow. Okay, so you've got this idea. You can measure these two things, but this one either causes that or changes it somehow. To put it another way, what you measure here depends on this one. Okay, this one gets determined by this one. All right, so let me just put it another way. When I change this one will change. Okay, because of that link. Okay, there's a link that goes in this direction. All right, this one makes changes over here. All right, so we need to look at these two things. So these are two variables, right? One thing, second thing, these are variables, just like we talked about on the previous bit of paper. This one here, because this one changes as that one changes, we call this the dependent variable. Okay? Because it depends on this one. All right, so if that one's called the dependent variable, this one here is the independent. Okay? This one stands alone. Okay, it happens and then it causes this change over here. Okay, now just for the sake of simplicity, I'm not going to write independent variable and dependent variable. I'm going to go dv and iv. Okay, that's just going to make life a lot easier because they're big words. All right, so what do I mean by this? Okay, one thing that can be measured that causes a change in another one. Well, let's look at some examples. Okay, so for instance, the number of hours you work, that's something you put numbers to, yeah? You can measure it. It affects your weekly pay. All right, so as this thing changes, that will change. And to put it another way, the value over here, the amount over here, is completely dependent on this thing here. Okay, this one causes that one. Okay, let's look at another example. Look at rainfall. Let's say you got millimeters of rainfall. Okay, so if you've got a lawn, the grass in the lawn, it causes the lawn growth. Now, it's not the only thing that causes that. Maybe we go centimeters per week. Okay, that's how you could measure how fast the lawn grows. Okay, but it has an impact on it. Okay, there's also fertilizer and blah 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 and temperature. Yeah, but So it doesn't direct, it's not the only thing that's causing that, but it has an impact. Okay, so independent variable, dependent variable. And they're two pretty good examples of that. So you will need to be able to make a judgment as to which one is an independent and which one's a dependent. Here's a way to think about it, okay? So let's say I was given this one here. I've got rainfall and I've got lawn growth. Which one's the independent and which one's a dependent? Put it in a sentence and to see if it makes sense. If I said to you, because the lawn grew a certain amount, it automatically caused the rainfall. That doesn't make sense. Just your experience in life, just because the grass grows a certain amount doesn't mean it's going to affect the weather patterns, okay? So that doesn't make sense. But if we flip it around the other way, because it rained a certain amount, it caused a certain amount of growth, that makes sense, okay? So if you just put it in a sentence and see if it makes sense. Alrighty, so what do we do with that? Okay, so we can graph these things. Now, we've already had a bit of a play with the Cartesian plane where you had the X and the Y, and there might have been numbers like this. Okay. By the way, they don't need to be the same scale, okay, but I've got it there for now. So we can use this to plot the independent variable and dependent variable. Now, here's the rules. Your independent variable always, every single time, goes on that axis there. So you're going to plot the independent variable along this axis. This one here is your dependent variable. Whatever they are, and whatever the units are, it goes up there. So this one is making the changes to that one. Okay, to put it another way, X is causing Y. All right, so that's how you tell them apart, okay? That's how you plot them, and that was some examples of them. But IV from here on in is going to stand for independent variable. DV is going to stand for dependent variable. You have to be able to tell them apart and recognize them and then plot them like this. Okay? Over to you.